Welcome to The Topic on HCC TV. I'm Todd Duplantis. Thanks for joining us. This is a show about Houston Community College, our students, our programs, and our reach into the community. If you're watching us on the cable channel, make sure you join us in social media. We have all types of things to explore. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, of course, Facebook, and YouTube. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, we're under Houston Community College. YouTube, we are the same, but make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get notifications when shows like these are posted. If you're into podcasting, well, we've got audio versions of all of our shows available at hccs.edu/podcast. May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. On this edition of The Topic, we're looking at how Asian and Pacific cultures are incorporated into HCC's programs. Now, the humanities have always been a key discipline in education, giving those valued soft skills to students entering a variety of professions. Dr. Ranjana Varghese is joining us now. She's the professor of English and Humanities, and she's joining us to talk to us about how Asian and Pacific traditions enrich the humanities. Good afternoon. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Varghese, let's talk about a course you teach called the Minority Experience in America. Tell us about the focus of that course and the goals you have for what you expect students to get out of it.
This is a really broad course because it is called the Minority Experience in America. So it encompasses all the minorities, I would say. But as we know, it's really hard to do a deep dive into any kind of survey course. So my goal for this course is really to guide students and help them to kind of see what's out there in America, right? So we know no culture is a monolith, and this is true, especially of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and all other cultures. So what my goal is for my students is to really awaken them to the richness and nuance of culture and history that is all around them, not just in the US, but in their neighborhoods. See what kinds of lived experiences there are with their neighbors, their families, their friends, their country, fellow Americans. And so the way I do this is to bring in a variety of texts from different cultural perspectives. So these texts include history, sociology, literature. We watch films and TV shows, music videos. We look and analyze news articles, essays, short stories, poems, artwork, music, right? So these expressions of our humanity, what better way is there to understand one another than through exploring these? So that's one of my major goals, is to just awaken students to the richness of culture that is in their neighborhood and in their country.
Do you find living in the Houston area, I mean, Houston's such a melting pot. You know, I always say you can go to a restaurant and people could be speaking Spanish to your left, Chinese in front of you, behind you, Korean, and that's the way of life here. We just have a number of cultures. Do you find that students going into your courses, because we live in the Houston area and the diverse cultures here, does that give them a leg up in at least having an open mind to what you're presenting them?
I think so. I think, you know, I'm really originally from Maryland, from the DC metro area, and I thought I lived in a really diverse city, but there's nothing quite like Houston. I mean, Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the US, and you're absolutely right. We have so much access to such richness of culture from all around the world. So yes, I think students do come in with some sense of the existence of these different cultures, right? And certainly, you know, a restaurant is a really great example, because one way we learn about different cultures, one easy way, is through food. And so that's a starting point, but that's not quite enough, right? We do need to go deeper than that. So certainly they come in with that awareness. And in fact, you know, so many foods from different regions around the world have become almost, you know, mainstream, like, you know, as American as, you know, X, Y, and Z, right? So in that sense, I think students are aware, but we try to go deeper than that as much as possible in the course.
You know, every group that joins America brings a unique contribution to or experience. How have AAPI been perceived throughout American history? And do you think the impression of perception is accurate or complete?
Well, that's a really complicated, complex question, right? And certainly, people from Asia and the Pacific Islands have been perceived very differently over the course of time, centuries, right? They range from being seen as undesirable aliens to, the model minority. And all of these perceptions are problematic in so many ways because they certainly do not acknowledge the fullness of the lived experiences of immigrants coming to a new country, becoming a part of that country, really working in that country, building the country literally and metaphorically, and becoming a very vital part of that country. And so I certainly don't think it's complete. We've come a long way since all of the restrictive immigration acts that were enacted to, really keep immigrants from certain parts of the world out. We're starting to see more representation in the arts, etc., but it's certainly not complete. And so I think classes like mine in the humanities, that's one of our goals, is to really move along this perception to becoming a more holistic one.
Let me ask you this. Over the last 3 to 6 months, we've been hearing a lot of discrimination against Asian Americans. Mm-hmm. Is that a topic that's been brought up in your courses? And what are you hearing from your students?
Due to the nature of the course, we have to take, two approaches. We have to look at the historical approach, how minorities of different parts of life, how they've been treated, and also what's happening today, right? So certainly we look at contemporary sources, and I make space in my class for students to share their experiences, to tell their stories, because this is it's a class that's very dynamic. So we want to hear about what students are experiencing, not just looking at texts and artwork and things like that. And so I think it's depending on what's going on at the time, it's varied, right? But the similarity is certainly any student can bring their lived experience, and we see that we have similarities across the board, whether it's you're Asian American or African American, we see those similarities, and making space for those stories to be shared in real time is really important to a course like this.
Have any of those stories really stood out to you, ones that really struck you?
Yeah, so we have, they tell these stories in class discussions, and also certainly in their written work. So over the last few years, as terms such as, microaggression or privilege have entered the mainstream, right? They've moved from the academic space to mainstream. Most of us know what those terms mean. And so students are able to really analyze their own experiences. And so for example, I've been grading, their final project presentations, and I had a student who wrote this poem, and he was talking about microaggressions, things that he never really sort of thought about or had a word to apply to his experiences. But after a lot of the readings that we did in class and discussions, he was able to say, well, yes, that's what these things are. And, understanding something and then figuring out how to navigate that reality, it makes a huge difference.
We've been talking with Dr. Ranjana Varghese, Professor for English and Humanities here at Houston Community College. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
Stick around on the topic. When we return, we're going to talk about the arts in Asia. Stick around. We'll be back after this.
The faculty at HCC represents the best of Houston. Whether your goal is a 4-year college, a better job, or a whole new career,
come learn with us.
HCC, for everyone, anytime, anyway.
Meet the scan, a simple procedure whose mission is to detect lung cancer early.
I'm here to save you.
But I feel fine.
That's great, but you may still be at high risk for lung cancer.
Oh man, that's a new fence.
If you smoke, early detection could save your life. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
If you love them enough to relearn math so you can teach them math, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
I love teaching at HCC.
I love helping students.
With college credits.
With scholarships and financial aid.
Training them for life-changing careers.
Come learn with us.
HCC, for everyone, anytime, anyway.
Welcome back to the topic on HCC TV. I'm Todd Duplantis. You're watching us on our cable channel. Make sure you follow us in social media. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. We're there as well. And most importantly, YouTube. You can find us under Houston Community College District. Make sure you subscribe to that YouTube channel and we'll send you notifications when new shows like this one are posted. If you want to download our podcast, we have audio versions of all shows available at hccs.edu/podcast. We're talking about Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month here on the topic. And HCC's fine arts instructors draw inspiration from around the globe. For drama instructor Elisa Diehl, she draws inspiration from the rich and varied theatrical traditions from Eastern China. Good afternoon.
Hi, it's actually East Asia. I've studied especially the arts from China in the Nanjing area, particularly Jingju, and many different arts from Japan for my thesis, but yeah.
I want to ask you about that thesis because it kind of just scrolled across in that you did your thesis and you got your master's from the University of Hawaii.
Yes.
Is that correct? So before we get to the questions, I want to ask you, are you from Hawaii? How did you wind up there? What was that like?
Well, I'm not from Hawaii. I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico. But I had been investigating schools where I could learn about specifically Japanese theater at the time. I broadened my horizons quite a lot in college, but I had already investigated schools in Japan, and I had complicated application processes, and I discovered that there is an agreement between Hawaii and New Mexico that for majors that aren't available in one or the other, you can get in-state tuition to go study it there. And one of the glorious, wonderful things on this list is the study of Asian styles of traditional theater at the MFA level. And because I'm New Mexican and am very passionate about traditional Asian theatrical art forms of many varieties, that is the program that I attended for my MFA.
That must have been incredible. Was it culture shock getting over there to Hawaii, and did you get island fever?
No, not really. I did have some serious allergy problems with the VOG when they had volcanic eruptions on the Big Island. There's some sort of a weather pattern that drops all of the ash and chemicals and things on Honolulu. So there was that. I guess that's the closest to island fever I experienced. But it's a lovely place with a rich and varied system of cultures. And I've always really loved that. New Mexico has a very similar thing going on with many disparate cultures in a small space, enjoying and respecting the benefits of that. So it actually isn't that far off. Also, I had moved away from Albuquerque, New Mexico more than a decade before I did my MFA in Hawaii, so I'd already been all over the place.
That's great. It's incredible. That is it's beautiful. I've been over there a couple times and been to the university grounds themselves. Beautiful out there. Let me ask you about that thesis. You were talking a little bit about it, but tell us about it and what it was all about.
Oh, absolutely. So at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, they have an MFA program, which is a terminal degree program. It's an endpoint for performers, where you do a basically deep dive, in-depth practical study of several traditional styles of performing arts from various parts of Asia. They usually focus on Indonesia, China, and Japan, but that's not set in stone. Of course, we also really enjoyed studying, especially arts from all over Asia, and Asia's huge. There's a lot going on there. So outside of my thesis, I studied Korean performing arts, and many different styles of, I hesitate to say Indian performing arts because there are so many different cultures on the Indian subcontinent of Asia. But you know, that those various, especially within the Sanskrit drama traditions, things like that. But for my thesis specifically, for my practical thesis, I studied with experts in the arts of No from Japan, Kabuki from Japan, and Jingju from southeastern China. And it was a process of studying the performance practices of those arts by creating a theater event. And we worked with the masters of those arts on the long term. The longest for me was Jingju, which is the Chinese art of the three. And I studied for 1.5 years to perform The White Snake, which was a third of my thesis. The 3 plays that were the results of the training processes were my practical thesis at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. It's a great program. I can't even imagine being able to study with masters of Jingju and No at the same institution. I couldn't have found a better place to study.
When you're studying what you did you happen to learn the language as you were deep diving into these books and literature? Did you get a chance to learn a lot of the terms or the lingo or the language itself?
Well, I already spoke Japanese. When I started the program. I had studied Japanese in high school, and then I had lived in Japan for about 3 years between degrees. So that wasn't really a problem. I was more commonly the translator when our visitors from Japan needed help communicating with people who didn't speak Japanese. I am very, very poor at speaking Mandarin Chinese. I don't speak many words, and I mispronounce all of them, even the titles of the art forms I have studied in depth. But I did have to memorize my parts for The White Snake in Chinese first, so that I would be able to embody the appropriate sense of rhythm and tone when we moved it into English for the actual performance. And that was a challenge because I, of course, don't speak that particular language. So it was the most challenging of the 3 for me for a lot of reasons, but that's one of them. I have, learned the terminology. Again, I mispronounce it, but it definitely helps me explain what I did to people who don't know anything about Jingju at all.
I want to ask you as well, and you kind of touched on this earlier, but we want to emphasize it's not Asian culture, it's Asian cultures.
Yes, and I'm very, very emphatic about that. I've actually given talks at other schools about just that. Asia is the largest of the continents. It makes up about 1/3 of the land area on our globe. So it's huge. More than half of the world's human population lives there. And there are 48 separate countries. And as I mentioned, when talking about the Indian subcontinent, within those countries, that's a political institution. Those aren't cultural boundaries. So the cultures aren't even homogenous within those 48 countries. So you really can't, try to shove all of those disparate, interesting, varied, rich cultures into the same basket and just call it Asian culture. And that's one of my very big pet peeves as someone who's passionate about studying just micro parts of various cultures. I'm primarily interested in theater, including the music and dance involved in traditional styles of theater. So there are many, many arts bundled up into the theater umbrella. Even within a single country, you can study the microculture of the people who create that specific kind of theater, and they're wildly different. So again, I find it a little disturbing sometimes, and I think it's tied a little bit into the colonialism that was rampant, especially in the 1800s, had kind of shifted the way English speakers refer to different regions in the world, and bundling Asian culture together is something that bothers me for a number of reasons, the largest one being that you cannot define that many people on that large a space as a unit.
Or one specific culture.
Yeah, no.
No.
It's a problem, and I think it leads to a lot of confusion when people think they're the same, when it's definitely not the case.
We've been talking with our drama instructor here at HCC, Elisa Diehl, and of course we've been talking about Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. We appreciate you joining us on the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here. It's certainly been interesting.
Thank you very much. We are going to take another short break. When we come back, we'll hear about our international business program. Stay tuned. We'll be back on the topic after this.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Roll over. When you adopt a shelter pet, you discover all the things that make them unique. And your mother. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love.
The faculty at HCC represents the best of the city. They're committed to getting our students to their goals.
A 4-year degree.
Workforce training.
A better life.
HCC, for everyone, anytime, anyway.
Welcome back to the topic on HCC TV. I'm Todd Duplantis. As always, watching us on our cable channel, look for us in social media. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and most importantly, YouTube. We're under Houston Community College District. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also, if you like audio podcasts, you can log into our podcast network at hccs.edu/podcast. Download the show of your choice and listen to it at your convenience. May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. On today's topic, we've been talking about that subject. And right now, we're joined by Loc Tran, who is Professor of International Business and Finance here at Houston Community College. Hello, Loc. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Thank you. And you?
You're doing very well. We're glad to have you on the show. I want to start off talking about our international business program. Maybe you can tell us a bit about that at HCC.
International business is a very interesting program at Houston Community College. This program provides students with knowledge and ability to apply technical skill necessary to pursue a career in the future, such as international marketing, international sales, import-export compliance, freight forwarding, and shipping, global logistics and supply chains.
When someone completes your program, you mentioned they could work in marketing, they could work in shipping. Could they stay in the Houston area, or is the job opportunities, are they growing in Houston for international business?
They can move anywhere, not only in Houston, but Houston is a very big city that can offer them a lot of opportunity to pursue any careers they want in the fields of international business, as in the area I just told you about, just like right. International marketing, international sales, or they can practice their import-export.
I know the Port of Houston is one of the largest ports in this country. Obviously, this plays a big role in international business in Houston. Do a lot of your students maybe work with industries that function out of the port?
Absolutely. They can work out of the Port of Houston, but Houston also have a very big port for them to practice their career and offer great opportunities for any kinds of careers related to international business that they already provide a knowledge and technical skill.
Why is understanding trade relationships with Asia in the Pacific important?
Asian and the Pacific has been the fastest growing region in the world for the past 3 decades. Over the coming years, it is expected to grow with the highest growth rates in the world, and it also serves as the engines of the world economies. Many countries in these regions are emerging markets, while the other become newly industrialized country. So they represent potentially attractive and a vast market for trade and investment. And the US government actively promotes the expansion of the US business in international trade. So that's why there's a lot of change. And it is very important to understand our trade relationship with the Asia and the Pacific.
How important is the Asian American market to our economy here in the United States?
Many Asian and the Pacific countries are resource supply center for the US, and the US plays an important role in East Asian trade. And these countries offer great opportunity for foreign investment. And in addition, Asian market become important target market for a wide variety of product and service from the US. Many US companies target emerging market for sales, manufacturing, and sourcing destination. Right. So, for example, when the economies improve in emerging market in those countries, the growing middle class in emerging market imply rising demand for various consumer products such as electronics and automobile, and the service such as healthcare.
It's always interesting to me that how people get their news from around the world. What are some of your favorite resources for keeping up with international business news? Your personal ones, which ones do you promote to your students?
Well, the Economics, that is in international weekly newspaper, print in magazine format and published digitally, that's focused on the current affairs, international business, politics, and technologies. And I also suggest the New York Times. This is an American daily newspaper in New York City with the worldwide readership. And then we also have some kind of website, for example, the Global Age, .msu, and .edu, that stands for Michigan State University. And right. We also have export.gov or imf.org or wto.org. So those are the websites the people can do some kind of research and find valuable information there.
We've been talking with Loc Tran from our International Business Program here at Houston Community College. Loc, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. If you're interested in the International Business Program, you can certainly go to our website at hccs.edu and look for international business. You can Google search it on our site. But most importantly, they're registering for the summer and the fall. All of our courses are right now. Register today at hccs.edu/now. Thanks for joining us on The Topic this week. I'm Todd Duplantis. We'll see you next time.